Yep.
Awesome. What is going on, Ridge Runner Nation? We are back for another Ridge Runners live show. And I don't know about you guys, but I haven't slept in days due to the excitement of having these two gentlemen on the show tonight. If you are talking about the top ultra runners in the state of Ohio, these two men have to be on that list. So without further ado, Gabe Rainwater, Travis Zipfel, how are you guys?
Great.
Good.
So obviously we always start off things with beer and whatnot. So what are you guys drinking tonight? Travis?
Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
I have a new Glarus it's out of Wisconsin. It is just their, I'm not even sure, it's just their ale. Pretty good. Nothing to rant and rave about, just solid. But I prefer some more IPAs. But yeah, it's good.
Love it. Gabe?
I'm actually drinking decaf coffee with cream.
Nice.
That's kind of my staple drink at night.
Decaf coffee before bed.
Yep.
You know, there's still caffeine in there.
Is there?
I think so.
Well,
they can't get it all out.
Yeah, probably not. I drink a lot of caffeine, so it doesn't really affect me.
John, what about you out there?
I am finishing up some wine because I have not had a chance to restock my beer collection since we went on half lockdown. So
I feel that. I am drinking Miller Lite out of the Thunder Bunny glass. I actually, just because I'm out of the glass tonight, I got 10-ounce beers. I was like bamboozled, and I think the world's ending. So it was a huge catastrophe I had a couple weeks ago. So I've been drinking them out of glass just to make myself feel better. But with that aside, on the Ridge Runners live show, we have a new policy. And basically, in the younger generation, there's a thing going around where it's phones eat first. Like when you get a meal, you take a photo of it, your phone eats first. On this show, dogs eat first. And these two gentlemen both recently got new dogs in their lives. Travis, can you show us your dog?
He's running around the kitchen right now. He might make an appearance here in a little bit. We'll see what happens. We'll give it a few minutes. I'll make a celebrity guest appearance with him. I can't really control a 10-week-old puppy.
What's the name of your dog?
Fitz. So Fitzgerald for when he's bad, I guess. Fitz when he is just a normal dog.
Awesome. Gabe, what's the name of your dog and what kind?
My dog's name is Twigs, and he is a Great Dane, Saint Bernard, Great Pyrenees mix. So he's about 11 weeks old, and he weighs about 40 pounds. But he is a very nice dog, very laid back, short hair, and is pretty chill. So
that's awesome.
Good boy, but he doesn't like to run. The only time he likes to run is when he sees our house, when we've been out, and he just starts running towards the house. So he doesn't really like to leave the house.
Mine is the same way. He's afraid to even leave the front yard, and when we're coming back from a walk, he starts sprinting towards the house.
Yeah, he sees his house, and they get excited. So.
They know a nap's coming, so that's what that's about.
yeah, they're good sleepers.
So these two gentlemen both ran some pretty awesome adventures and races in the past couple weeks. Gabe ran 100 miles in his own backyard this past weekend, which actually just lit the Strava world on fire. 2 weeks ago, Travis won the Bel Monte 50-mile endurance run. So we're going to start with Gabe and just hear all about his experience with this 100-mile run that he decided to do. So just to start things off, Gabe, tell us about your mindset going into this run. When did this idea first pop into your head, and when did it really become real for you?
Well, so I was signed up for the Ohio backyard, which was the same weekend, right? Last weekend. And I've been training pretty hard for it. And then as things have developed over the past couple of weeks and it was postponed, I was, kind of struggling on what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. So, let's see. I think Wednesday before I kind of set my mind on what I wanted to do. Well, so I had my backyard goal. I had the backyard goal, and I was thinking I want to go farther than I've ever gone before, which, I'm pushing for 200 miles is sort of my backyard where I'm at with that. So, I had these visions of going and running a 200-mile event, just going and running 200 miles, how long it takes me. But I looked at the weather, and I was like, it's kind of crappy weather. I don't really want to be gone for 2 days. So I was like, well, what's my next goal? And I thought, well, I've wanted to run a fast 100 for a while and sort of test my limits on that aspect. So I was debating on what course I wanted to do. And I thought, well, with all the lockdown stuff, I was feeling like I should just stay home. So I decided on the course. Basically, I think it's about a 0.6 mile loop, and it's all uphill one way and all downhill the other way. And it's this loop. And it's a gravel lane. It just goes past our front door. So my aid station was easy. And so I just decided, well, let's do it. So I woke up and hit start on the watch and put my head down and started running, and it stopped when it said 100 miles.
That's absolutely crazy. So to put it in perspective, Gabe said this was his PR. He finished it in 17 hours, 51 minutes. And the even more impressive part about this, the course had 20,000 feet of elevation gain over the course of the 100 miles. So it wasn't like this gravel loop was just 50 feet up, 50 feet down or whatnot. Did you ever, you've run this loop multiple times before. Did you ever have a goal of maybe hey, one day I want to run 100 miles on this and see what I can do?
No, I had a goal of running 30 on it, which I did a couple weeks ago. But 100, it's just, no, I never thought about running 100 miles on that loop.
Can I ask the next question about that?
Yeah.
So do you, you've run multiple times. You've run lots and lots of 100-milers. Do you think because you had unlimited aid station access, or because you are just feeling that much more in shape, that you were able to just absolutely, dominate any time you've had on something with way more vert than anything you've, I think than anything you've even ran, right? Or
yeah. I mean, the most climbing I've done in 100 has probably been at Mohican. So one of the factors is I'm in pretty good shape, or I'm in probably some of the best shape of my life. I've done a lot more cross training, done a lot more strength training with body weight stuff, and yoga, and I can feel that making a difference. And then the aid station, having the aid station, I mean, every half a mile was helpful, but it can also be a down because it's you're like, well, I can just stop again. And when you're running that fast, you can't stop, basically. So what I did, I tried to stop, for the first 50 miles, I tried to stop every 10 miles is what I was doing. And then after 50, it was every 5 miles. And then after about 75, it was every 2.5 miles I was stopping. But I think one of the biggest factors was the temperature of the day. The high was 51 degrees. And I think the low, when I started, it was 20 degrees. And I really do a lot better in cooler temperatures. I just get really overheated in even, 60. I mean, just the warmer it gets, the more I struggle. So that was my first, it was my first 100 where it was 50 degrees, sort of ideal temperatures. So I think that had a big difference. And I mean, like, so the hill, the other thing is I really do well with a walk break. Like, I'm not a very good continuous runner, like, you know, a marathon or even like a flat 100 or a flat ultra where you're just using the same muscles and running at the same sort of clip for, you know, hours on end. So like the fact that the hill just kind of forced my walk, which actually keeps me sort of stronger. And I have been doing a lot of training on hills, so I was pretty prepared for it. But that's what I think. I mean, that's where I'm at, I think.
Yeah, and just a reminder to everyone in Ridge Runner Nation, if you have any questions in the chat, make sure to drop those in there so we can relay those along. Yeah, it was absolutely just wild seeing that and whatnot. I think I looked at the splits, but I think you spent like maybe 25 minutes over the course of the whole day at aid stations. So it wasn't like you were spending hours upon hours, which can end up taking a lot of time.
Yeah. Like, so when I think when I uploaded it to Strava, you know, Strava it does just your running time. It doesn't include your stoppage until you make it a race, till you caption it a race. So like when I first uploaded, I think I was about 17 hours and 15 minutes. And then when I hit race, it changed it to my real time of 17:50, whatever it was. So yeah, I only had about 30 minutes or so of stoppage.
What time did you start in the morning?
I started at like 5:35, I think.
So I guess the
Roughly.
big question with this is obviously we'll get into like the quarantine backyard ultra in a little bit, but why did you not just go for maybe a backyard ultra solo effort and just kind of test yourself in that regard compared to just doing 100 miles?
Probably mostly because I just didn't want to take the time. I mean, I you know, just sitting around by myself, like running and then stopping and sitting there and then getting up and running and stopping and sitting. I don't know. I just didn't feel like, I mean, and partly because I think Saturday was it was not a great weather day. And so I just kind of was sort of just squeezing it in on the Sunday and just, you know, I kind of just, even with my training and running, I do whatever sort of what I feel like that day. I mean, I wake up, I try to do something every day, but so every day I wake up and be like, well, today I feel like running a 10-mile tempo, or today I feel like doing 10 miles of hills or whatever. So it's kind of like, well, this week I'm feeling kind of like running a fast 100. So that's what I did.
I hope I wake up one day and decide to do that. Your splits were super solid all day. That's another thing that I looked at and was super impressed with. What was like your lowest moment during the day? And then obviously like what was the highest point for you?
Okay. So my lowest moment was like between 50 and 55 miles, I think. And I was getting just getting pretty tired. And I spent like, I don't know, I think I had a mile in there. I had like an 18-minute mile and then a 14-minute mile. And I was just kind of down on energy. And I was on my hands and knees at one point, you know, just kind of stretching out. And, but I just kept going, and I came out of it and then felt good the rest of the day. Like, and then the high point was sort of getting like within 5 miles or so. And I was like, hey, it's pretty cool. Like, you know, I start pumping myself up, and then my parents actually, they just live up the hill from us, and they walked down and were standing there cheering. And I said, I got one more lap. And Dad said, well, you're ahead of all of them or something. I said, I know, I'm kicking everybody's ass today. So, you know, it's like, I mean, I don't know. I find that I don't really need, you know, you can have races and you can I just always compete with myself. So, I mean, that's what running for me has always been, is just competing with myself. So that's all I was doing.
I think it's kind of interesting that you say that you like to compete with yourself. And I think that might be like a really powerful mindset for you. Going back to the past 2 years, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're the most consistent ultra runner in all of Ohio, if not the Midwest, because in 2018 you started your year off with the Super Bowl Trail Championship. You took first there. Thunder Bunny, you took 4th place that year. Race Trail Race 1st place. Mohican 100 5th place. Olanders Ultra 5th place, and you ended the year with New Hop 50K 3rd place. 2019 you followed it up with OBU 2nd place, Bob's Backyard 2nd place, Mohican your best time there 3rd place, North Coast 24 3rd place, 110 miles, Big's Backyard Ultra, I know it's a Backyard Ultra 11th place, 150, and then we'll forget about Bigfoot 50K. But
Yeah.
how do you think that your mindset of just always competing with yourselves translates to always being so consistent at all of these races that you enter? Because a lot of people maybe struggle or have highs and lows, but you're just seem to knock it out of the park every single time.
Well, I think some of it has to do with the number of years I've been doing endurance sports. Like, I feel like when I first started running, you know, I'd get injured and you'd have setbacks and stuff like that. And the longer I've gone, like in the last 5 years, I've really noticed that I'm basically physically, I feel almost, indestructible. Like I can just basically run and run and run. So it's just, you know, I work really hard at it. I wake up, you know, every day. I eat, I watch what I eat. I do a lot of yoga. I do a lot of just sort of thinking about it, and I probably spend too much time at it really for it just being a hobby, but it's what, like, you know, it's what fuels me. And it truly is. I mean, it's just sort of competing with myself too. So I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it has been my diet. Like the last couple of years, I've cleaned up my diet, and you know, I've cut out sugar and I still eat a lot of carbs, but better carbs, and try to cut out, you know, be mindful of processed foods, and I think that's cut down on my inflammation in my body, so I'm able to recover. So that, you know, that's made a big difference.
He's got poop. Gabe's like a fine wine. He's a 12-year-old wine.
He's about to poop or already did.
Yeah.
Please go out.
Yeah. Well,
he
when I
keeps
first
getting
started,
better every year.
Yeah. Well, and when I first started, I was, you know, 19 years old, and you know, they say you don't hit your your endurance prime until you're in your 30s or late 30s, early 40s. So I kind of feel like that. I mean, I feel like that's true. And I've also seen stuff that says, you know, it takes a number of years for your body to build itself up to being able to do that too. So I feel like that is also the case. Because I don't have to train as hard as I used to, and my times, you know, are just as good or better. So
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That building that you do year over year, those speed workouts that you mix in year over year, your body becomes more able to adapt to that stress of a race, or that pace that you used to think was much harder to, you know, keep. That now it might be hard, but it doesn't hurt as bad, even though you might have the same heart rate or the same, you know, your body is just a master at adapting to stress. And once you do it for year over year over year, your body just kind of begins to normalize it and adjust to it a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, and I've sort of just in the past couple of years, I've sort of bought in to this idea that once you've been somewhere physically, you can get back to that point, and you can then break through that point. And that was sort of another reason for doing this run that I did this past weekend. Was, so for example, like there was a time in my life where I'd never run 100 miles in a week, and like the first time I did that, it was like, you know, I was sort of exhilarated, but I was also exhausted, and you know, I actually probably came away from it more beat up than what was, good for me. But having done that, then you can take some downtime and you can come back to that level and get back to that level easier than if you had never done it. So in the aspect of or running like a 3-hour marathon, it took me years and years and years to run a 3-hour marathon. And then when I did, it was a lot easier to get back to that. So it took me, so for example, it's taken me 13 years to break 20 hours in a 100-miler. And now I've done it twice in the last 5 months. So I sort of feel that way, like with backyard ultras too. You can't go from, a 100-miler to a 300-miler. You have to break yourself into it. And so that's kind of my mindset. My ultra running mindset right now is that's sort of where I'm at, just breaking myself in. So I kind of wanted to do this run. I was like, I'm in really good shape. Let's take advantage of this to push my body somewhere where it hasn't been before, so that when the time comes that the races are back on, I can get back to that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, especially at the point where you said you're building up in these backyard ultras and whatnot. I think the first one you ran, you went 131, and then next time you bested that by 4 more miles, 135, and then obviously 150 at Big. So in a couple weeks, I saw that you're signed up for the quarantine backyard ultra. It's going to be a virtual backyard ultra, and there's a lot of really competitive runners that have signed up for this race across the world, honestly. What are your goals for that? What are your kind of expectations going into it, and how do you think it'll go?
Well, so I don't really know. I have no idea. The competitive side of me is really gung-ho about it. But sort of the sensible side is I just don't know how it's all going to work with the technology. Here at my house, I don't have very good or non-existent internet service. So I won't be able to be on Zoom for the face feed. So I'm hoping just to upload my runs to Strava. And I'm just going to do that. And I have a course, I think, design, set up, I'm working on, and we'll see. I also thought about going to a friend's house, but I don't know, I don't know the rules. I could go to this buddy's house and set up in his front yard and have a Zoom connection and be able to run easier or be connected to Zoom, but I don't know if that goes against the quarantine aspect of the backyard ultra or not. So, but either way, I'm going to run.
After 4 days of running, you basically live there anyway, right?
Yeah, well, that's what, So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to, I don't know, with the number of people. I think there's 500 plus people already signed up for this thing. And, I just don't know how I don't know. It'll be interesting. If nothing else, I'll have, 4 miles every hour for who knows how long on Strava. So you can cheer for me.
So with this quarantine race, is there, are you supposed to design a course with a certain amount of elevation to it? And then you said you guys were talking about either uploading each individual run to Strava, or is it and then the Zoom aspect as well? How's all that work out?
Well, that's what. So no, so there's 2 options. You can even run on a treadmill. And if you run on a treadmill, you're just supposed to put your Zoom camera on your treadmill when you finish your 4 miles to show that you did it. And then they also have an option where if you're going to run outside, then it made it sound to me that you were going to upload every 4 mile run would be uploaded as its own individual run, and then you'd start it over again. That's my understanding of it right now. And the course can be whatever. You can run up a mountain, or you can run down a mountain, or you can run flat or hills, or whatever you want to do. It's just so. It says on there it's just for fun, and that's sort of how I'm treating it. I'm just gonna run for fun. I may get into it. My body might say, it's only 10 days away, so my body might say, oh, you're a dork for trying to do this after what you just did. So we'll see.
Mary chimed in here and said that you touched on it a little bit, but can you summarize the biggest lessons you learned from your backyard experiences and maybe how those will translate into the one you're going to try to do in a couple weeks?
Yeah. So well, on paper, it sounds really easy. But you have to remember that it's 100 miles in 24 hours is what you're doing, which is not an easy feat, really. I mean, it took me a number of years to run 100 miles in 24 hours. So, that's 100 miles in 24 hours is still nothing to think is easy. And then the rest breaks don't add up to the effort it takes to knock those minutes off to get the extra rest. So, for example, if you're running to knock a mile off your, to gain 4 minutes of rest would equals a minute a mile. Is the effort that you're putting out for that minute a mile doesn't work itself out as being helpful. So my philosophy is you run slow as you can, and then you just run slow. Treat it like a 200-mile race or 300-mile race or 150-mile race, whatever you want to put in your head, and pace for that. And the hardest part about it too is then you just have to answer that bell every time. There's no laying on your back for an hour and then getting up and running 8-minute miles again. You have to keep that pace and answer that bell every hour, which can get challenging. And then I think the thing I learned at Big that sort of hit me was you can't worry about how you're feeling at this loop, because I think that's what did me in. I said I was really struggling with when I finally called it quits, and I was like, you know what? I'm really struggling now. What's the next loop going to be like? And what's the next loop going to be like? And I was like, well, if I'm feeling like this right now, what's the point? Because the next loop's going to feel like this. And you can't do that. You just have to say, all that matters right now is what I'm doing right here. And, the next loop, you can come out of it, or you could suffer for a while. But all that matters is just one more loop, one more step. So I think that's
awesome,
what I've
man.
learned.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited to follow you along, obviously, on the Strava feed or whatnot, or whether you get the Zoom working or whatnot. It's going to be fun in a couple weeks from now. Tune into you just running loops and loops for hours on end.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah, do you think – hold on. I have a question to ask Gabe here. Do you think – so you ran, 150-something at Biggs?
Yeah, 150, yeah.
So that's 36 hours. If you were just given 36 hours, do you think you could, on your own schedule, like how you just ran 17 on 100 the other day, on your own schedule, do you think you could do 100? Do you think you could easily top that number? Or do you think because you have like a mandatory break every hour, it's easier to keep going? I'm just curious what your philosophy is on that. Like if it would be harder to just straight up run 150 because you might potentially burn out, and that rest break every hour, even if it's 3 minutes, kind of helps. I'm just curious on your philosophy on that.
Right. Well, so I mean, what I feel like is, I mean, you have these 24-hour races, and you have these top guys for the U.S. teams and whatnot who run 150, 160, 170 miles in 24 hours. And then you have these backyard ultras where you're running 150 miles in 36 hours, and for me personally, who doesn't have quite the super foot speed, I think like the bigs. Well, I don't know. The thing is, it's also on your feet. You're on your feet for that long, which is also, or just being awake. And so it's really like the backyard style I think is more challenging for that aspect, because you're, 36 hours, like someone like Harvey Lewis can run 150 miles in 24 hours and not be sort of tired, sleepy tired. Whereas, when you run 150 miles at a backyard ultra, you're, 36 hours, and that's just that much longer you've been awake. So I think that, if that makes sense, it's a challenge.
Well, I understand. I've seen you at Olander, and I've seen you at a backyard, and the shape and condition you looked in a backyard ultra looked way more in control, as opposed to the constant you don't get a break. Every time you get a break is potentially miles you're losing. So I was just curious on your own thought.
Yeah, well, like for my own self, I think would be a stronger backyard runner than like a 24-hour runner. Partly, just because I just think I'm a better backyard runner than a 24-hour runner. I mean, I ran a 150-mile race one time. It was in 2008, and it took me 47 hours. And that was just, you go, and it was on a trail, but you just ran, your own race, your own time, however you wanted. And it took me 47 hours. And then like at Biggs, with the set pace, I was 36 hours for 150 miles. I'm a lot better runner now than I was then, but I mean, I think it's a great way. The backyard ultra is a great way to go for a long time, if you've never done it, but it's also a challenge because it's a set. Someone who is used to running fast, like for you, Travis, who's used to running 100 miles, you haven't spent that much time past 20 hours in a race ever because you're fast enough to be done. And so I think those guys coming into an event like a backyard ultra are surprised at how it can,
I don't like it.
It can be difficult.
I know it's not my event. I tried one. I wasn't necessarily fatigued. I wasn't necessarily, out of it. I was like that. I just knew it wasn't for me. I mean, I got to about 100K and I was like, it is a really fun event and I love the environment and I wish every race had that type of environment where you get to see those same people every 4 miles. But I know that is not specifically my type of race, but I appreciate it and I'll go to anyone I can just to spectate because it is a really friendly spectator event and it's just a really fun event to be at. It's kind of turned ultra running into a spectator sport.
Otherwise that usually is, I mean, to spectate 100 miler is kind of difficult. But backyard ultra is easier to watch, I guess, or follow along with. But
definitely.
you're too fast, Travis.
I don't know. I think you'd give me a run for my money this year.
Travis definitely loves running away from people, and that's what he did 2 weekends ago at the Bel Monte 50 miler, where he just ran away from the rest of the field. This was actually one of the last races not canceled due to COVID-19. For those of you that don't know much about the Bel Monte 50, the race features challenging climbs, technical and runnable sections. It's an out and back style that takes place in the George Washington National Forest. So Travis, to kind of dive in deep here with you, how your race was that day, what was your mindset going into this race? And did you actually know it was going to take place? Like, when did you feel confident that I'm actually going to run this thing with everything going on in the world?
It was weird. When my wife Erin and I, when we were driving down, or over, I guess, we had gotten off at exit to get some lunch, and we were going to pull into a Kroger just to get some stuff, and it looked like just a chaotic, like, zombie apocalypse scene in the Kroger, and we were just like, "What? We can't go in there." Like there were cars parked like on the curbs. It really like kind of freaked us out for a minute. And like after we're like, okay, let's just get back on the highway. And we kept driving, and we're just like, I was like, should we like keep going? Like we're not quite halfway yet. Like does this feel right? And then like right after that, I had checked my email, and like Airbnb was like, oh, because you're going to like a county where there is a case of the virus going on, like we offer a free refund, no questions asked. And we're like, oh, what is going on here? Um, so I don't know. I mean, we ended up just, we kept driving. We got to this, we stayed at a barn, just kind of in the middle of like the George Washington Forest was in the backdrop, and we were like, okay, yeah, this feels right. So it was freaky. I didn't really quite like, because it was still, I mean, that was 2 weeks ago. It was before like it had all really set in. I think everybody felt a lot more panic back then. Not that you shouldn't still feel kind of like, you know, a little bit on edge. I think there's still a lot of safety precautions everybody should be taking, and we should respect all the things that especially the state of Ohio is trying to enforce. But it really just hadn't quite set in yet, and that really kind of made it feel like we were in a movie. I don't know. I felt like very anxious, like kind of on edge. And then, I mean, even the race morning, the race directors, I think they knew they were very fortunate to be able to, whether it was bad judgment or good judgment, who knows? I haven't heard of anything coming out of that race that said like, oh, somebody contracted that at that race. So, I mean, it was risky judgment, but I think they used the best precautions they could have. All the aid stations, I didn't take any food from there. I think I took a banana once, but everything was prepackaged. So they didn't have like any open food, any open containers. So they really did a good job at making sure that their environment was as contained as possible, and that people weren't going to be, I mean, spectators it was pretty limited. I would say a good portion of people probably didn't even show up. Maybe I think most of the main guys that were gonna try and run fast were there. I mean, I know Brian was there. There was a few other guys that I knew kind of by name, but not really. I'd never really raced against any of them. But it was anxious. I felt anxious before the start. But after the gun or the whistle or the bullhorn went off, it just felt kind of at peace again. Like everything, once you're on trail, everything kind of just goes away. Feels normal again. So it was anxious to start, but after the race officially started, that anxiety really kind of went by the wayside. Something that we didn't really have to think about, or I didn't think about. Erin, who was crewing for me, definitely took a lot more precautions than she probably would have at a normal race. And I think a lot of that had to do with just how the aid stations were set up. But yeah, it was a strange environment.
Definitely. Before we dive too deep into your actual race, how did you find out about this race?
How did I? So the first person I actually heard about it from was a guy. I had never known that this race had been going on for like 10 or 14 years. A guy I ran a race in December, I think it was. It was a 50K up in the Cleveland area. And the guy who got like third or fourth was saying he was running a 50 miler, and it was called Bel Monte. And I was like, oh, how have I never heard of that? Is it a new race? And he goes, no, it's been going on for some time. And then I looked into it. I kind of penciled it in. There was a few other races I was considering at the time, but I wanted to. I've only ever raced 150 miler, and I didn't do well at all. It was like my first ultra ever. And I ran like a 12-hour maybe 13-hour 50 miler with like 2,200 feet of gain, which for some people that's still very good. I think I thought I was much more capable of running something a little bit faster. And so I kind of penciled it in as an early season kind of tough race that I felt if I was in good shape, I could run well. I've always raced well in Virginia. And this just happened to be a Virginia 50 miler, and it kind of really piqued my interest. Guy Tyler Piedmont, I think, he ran Regal Beagle with me, and I think he was fourth place. He still ran sub 4, very, very fast. I mean, the course is pretty conducive to some fast times, but definitely a quick guy to watch out for. So he kind of told me about it. I looked into it, found out it's been around for some time, and penciled it in. Wasn't sure that I was going to do it until, a little bit later. I'd say probably 2 months after that.
Definitely. So take us through your race. Obviously, the gun goes off. What happens from there? Is it you and Brian the whole way, or just paint the picture for us?
Yeah, it was. I don't know. The first 2 miles is kind of a road section. It's not. It's definitely road, and it's downhill. So the first 2 miles were about 500 feet of loss over the course of 2 miles, which you got to remember it's out and back. So you got that 400 to 500 feet back up on the last 2 miles. But it was a road section. So we started off, it just felt really easy. We were probably in that like 6:30 pace for the first 2 miles, which
6:30 pace. Yeah, it's easy for some people. So no.
Hey, this is on road downhill. So it just kind of, you've got that kind of like a little bit of, anxiousness built up where you just kind of, it feels good to let it loose a little bit. You're not going straight into a climb and breathing hard. You got to get your lungs going before you had to enter any climbs. So I think it's a lot different. Like, I had a race last year in Colorado where you started at the base of a ski resort and you just go straight up. I think it's a lot harder to start a race when you just go straight up, as opposed to, I got 14 minutes of stretching out my lungs before I had to do any climbing. I got to stretch out my legs with a good kind of like little tempo before I had to go into any serious, I don't know. It felt right. It felt good. We were, so there was, I think the first real climb was probably around like mile 3 or 4. It was about 1,000 foot of total climb up into the aid station at mile 5. And there was enough switchbacks where I could still see. I definitely was a little nervous that I took it out a little fast. Brian was probably 20 seconds, 10 seconds back on me when we entered into the trail. And I kind of just kept moving along. But as we were nearing the top of the climb into the aid station, I was kind of just looking down over the switchbacks, and I could see the headlamps were back. It's kind of hard to gauge, how many switchbacks you've gone through. But I would have guessed like, a minute, maybe a minute and a half back. And I'd gotten into the aid station, and I don't think I took anything. I took off my long sleeve. It was probably like 35 degrees, but I actually wore a race pack. I don't really hardly ever wear one, but it was nice to just have like a few extra things in there. I just carried my food in there all day, random gels. And I think I had my gloves in there, or I still had my gloves on at the time. But it was just, I can't give my wife enough credit for her being at every aid station possible. And, the reason I was so efficient is I had liquid nutrition all day, and I had 2 bottles, and every time I saw her, we would just hand off. And I think I maybe spent a total of 2 minutes at aid station, on the whole race. So I was just in and out. She would see me when I was still 150 yards out or so. And if I did need anything, I would just kind of yell it. Like I said, like banana, or I said like Coke. and, I'd have it right there. I'd drink some, and I'd just be on the road, or I'd be right up the trail again. So coming into, I think, mile 13, half marathon, actually at mile 10, when I was running, I was trying to eat a gel and I just wasn't paying attention, and I just absolutely face planted. It was like a super flat section. Didn't look like there was any. I mean, Virginia is just super rocky, and if you're not paying attention for a second, I looked up and I took my headlamp off the trail because we were about 2 hours in, and the race started at 5 a.m. And so it was still dark, or it was like that weird light where it's almost light enough to see without a headlamp, but it really throws off your eyes. And I find myself in any race during that time frame, that is always when I fall. So I just took a nasty fall, like right onto my shoulder, collarbone. I think I hit my head a little bit, but just yelled a few profanities and just kept going. And rolled through like there's like a mile, I think at mile 13, ended up not running across the mat, and like almost, I had to have looked like such an idiot because I came like running in there really fast. And I like almost like wiped out trying to like get back to their mat, because they're like, you need to run across the mat over here. And I like tried to turn real quick and like almost rolled on the ground, but like caught myself, but skidded my hands on the ground. Yeah, that was right before we had to go in. We had a little bit of flat section again, but then ended up going up a climb to a really steep climb, actually, probably one of the steepest climbs of the day. The steepest climb of the day hits you right before the end, but it took, so you get a big climb from like 20, or I want to say probably 15 to let's call it 17 to like 22, and then like 22 down to 26 is a really long, like 2,500 foot descent that you just turn around at 20. I think that course is a little over 50. I think it's like 52-ish normally. But you come right back up that trail section. You get a 4-mile climb out of the turnaround, which is, Gabe, you would totally grind it out because it's just that like kind of perfect grade that it's runnable, but it's not, I mean, you can hike it, but you can easily, like, if you're just a good climber, you know that it's just that perfect grade where you just keep the feet moving and you're going to keep going right up it.
You're right. The problem would have been I would have been an hour behind you. It wouldn't have mattered. But yeah, I would be grinding that climb like crazy.
I have never really had too many out and back courses, but what was cool about this course is obviously it being out and back, and when you are in the lead in an out and back, you get to see exactly where somebody else is at. So I was looking at my watch right when I wanted to see the mileage, and it just happened to be we turned around right at 26.2. So I knew, like, okay, marathon, I can remember that even in my hazy, like, oxygen depleted brain. So when I saw second place, I was like, I think it ended up being mile 28. So I knew I was about 1.8 miles up. So I figured, roughly, let's just call it 18 minutes is what I kind of gave myself in my head. So I just kept moving well. But I knew, like, 18 minutes in an ultra, like, you make one mistake and, that 18 minutes can disappear really quick. Whether you, don't feel good and you have to walk for 5 minutes, that person, can gain ground there. You take a long aid station break, that person can give it right back on you. But I decided to do neither of those, and I just decided to take a wrong turn. So I actually didn't take a wrong turn. I just kept going straight. I think the course marking on the course was really good. This just happened to be, like, the cutback was a little tighter than I remember it being when we were running. But there was enough like kind of sandy trail that we were on, like where it was kind of wet, and it was like flat and packed out, where it had rained the day before, and there wasn't any trail. Like I'd been running down the trail for about not quite a half mile, and I was just like, wait, why are there no footsteps on this trail? And I got that like gut feeling where I was like, I'm going the wrong way. But so I think that really kind of was my low point during the race. Well, actually, right then wasn't, but I burnt a little too much fuel on that next half mile getting back on course, because I was running scared. I was kind of nervous. So I think I pushed myself a little too hard running through that section. But got back on, felt a little depleted after, once I was on the trail again, I was running for about 10 minutes and I was like, oh, I don't think I should have ran that hard, where you just get that kind of like your brain kind of clicks and you're like, that might've been a bad idea. But we had about another 3 miles of descent, going into the aid station. And I got down there and I honestly, I thought I was still in first. I should have known I still was, because I had enough of a lead that I didn't think anybody was going to crush it out of there. But, I want to say it was probably like mile 32-ish, 33-ish. I was nervous. I was kind of like a little flustered when I saw Aaron. It was probably my longest aid station, where I drank like half a bottle of Coke and had a banana. And, was just like, okay, like gotta get my head back in the game. And, even when you're in the lead of a race, it can still be like, it's almost sometimes more nerve wracking, because you don't need to catch anybody. You just need to make sure the person behind you doesn't catch you, and you don't know where that person's at or how they're feeling. I think you don't have as much pressure when you're not leading a race, because all you have to do is, if you keep your position, that's great. Like you're happy with that. But if you stalk that person and catch them, that's so much more fun. I chugged along, but I got to when I had about 13 miles left, I was really starting to doubt everything. And, I was just taking it 5 minutes at a time, through a slow, gradual uphill, until about mile 48, which was, I think mile 48 was a 980-foot climb. So my mile 48, I think I put down a solid 20-minute 1,000-foot climb mile, coming out of, I guess we'd call it a canyon, or it felt like we were going straight up a wall. It was very, very, very steep. I would have been more efficient crawling. I couldn't even, I don't remember running down it, because it felt really easy early in the morning. And I didn't think we ever ran it down anything that steep, because I could hardly even put a leg in front of my other leg. So it was, and then, after I got out of that little canyon, I knew I had about 5 miles left, about 1,000 feet of gain, 500 of that being on road, and about 500 of that being on trail. So I, drank the rest of a half a bottle of Coke and grabbed one more. I think I took my vest off at that time, and just ran in a short sleeve and had my just liquid nutrition. And I kind of knew at that point, because I told Aaron when there was 13 miles left to tell me how far back second was. And I found out that he was still about 15 minutes back on me. And, that kind of gave me that, that little bit of hope that I needed. Like, I thought I could still finish strong, but knowing that I still had that kind of lead, like, actually made me finish stronger. Cruised down in and went just under 8, I think. So, well, I know, but yeah, it felt good. I was happy to get one of the, I think I kind of left it out there just because I knew I wasn't going to get to race again. for some time. I knew a lot of races were already canceling. So I just wanted to, I had fun with it. I took a little bit of a risk on some of the things, but, it's a little bit, some of it's risk and some of it's, just you trust your training. So a little bit of both and just see where that blend ends up.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, man. It sounds like you had an absolute crazy day. You ran the 6th fastest time in course history. The race has been going on for 13 years now, so it was a super impressive effort. Obviously, the field was pretty competitive. Brian Rosicki was out there. He's won the event multiple times. He's got multiple finishes in that top 6 time as well. So it's just kind of epic to hear about that. Obviously, you touched on it a little bit, but you got lost and always seems to happen to you, unfortunately. But we'll get that figured out, hopefully, in the future. One thing I want to ask you.
Running too fast. You get lost, you run too fast, and you just got your head down. Don't look where you're going.
Oh, I got my head up. There's just no oxygen in there.
Yeah, well, yeah, either way. Yeah.
I got a couple of final questions here to ask these two. It might go a little bit longer than usual, but I want to get these in. Travis, what surprised you most about being out there at this race that you didn't really expect going into it?
So if you would have asked me halfway through that race, I would have thought that this race was only going to have like 4,000 feet of gain. Because I hadn't yet gone up any climbs. Well, I had, but like they didn't seem noticeable. I wouldn't have guessed that it had like 8,800 feet of gain. Lot steeper, but absolutely gorgeous. It had everything you could want in it was tough. It was scenic. It had flats. It had steep downhills. It had a bunch of stream crossings, super technical. It was just a really good race. I mean, I've always really liked a race in Virginia. I think it kind of levels the playing field. If you're a really fast runner, it doesn't necessarily matter because the terrain's super technical. So you just have to have quick feet. If you're it's a perfect leveling of all. You have to be a good climber. When you get the flats, you have to run fast on them. So I've always really liked to run in Virginia just because it kind of levels the playing field of people that just have one skill set. It kind of really shows like the most well-rounded runners, I guess, on the East Coast at least. Your West Coast runners still do well on the East Coast, but some of that technical is a little bit different for them. I'm not saying it's completely. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff out west, but some of the stuff you're going to see out west is going to be a little bit more, buffed out, flatter, faster stuff. But it's just a really enjoyable race. It was fun. It kind of had everything. Aid stations were great for everybody. My wife was able to see me at every single aid station. I've never ran a race in my entire life where I've gotten to see my crew at every single aid station. So it just had a lot of really good things, especially for people that are looking for a first time. It is fast if you run it right. And Virginia's got a lot to offer in a trail race.
That's awesome, man. Transitioning Gabe here. You obviously ran your first 100 miler, I think at the age of 19 years old. You're a 13-time Mohican finisher. One of the biggest things I always advocate for is young people in the sport. How did you run your first 100 miles so young? And what advice would you give to someone maybe just got out of college or in the college age looking to run their first 100 miler?
Yeah. So when I first started running ultras, no one was running ultras that were close to my age. And it was just starting. You'd have some the youngest guys were 24, 25. The Antons and the Skags are some of the names that I remember who started throwing down really fast times. But that was sort of just the beginning of the young bucks in ultra running. So I started running. Wow, geez, it's been so long ago. I started running sort of to be in shape for baseball, and then my baseball career fizzled out. And I had some friends who were training for Mohican, and they said they were training to run 100 miles, and I was like, that's absolutely insane. And then I signed up, and I just started running. So like, if you're looking to come at it as a first timer, younger, my advice would be, oh shoot, what would my advice be? I'm kind of drawing a blank, but like, oh shoot. To just, well, okay, here I got some, this was what I would say. Don't worry about mileage, first of all. Like, don't feel like you have to run a certain amount of miles a week. Focus more on time on your feet. So like, if you want to do a long run, you go 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever you want to do, and just go out and have fun. Just be on your feet for that time. Walk the hills. Like, I used to do training runs with guys, and we would just sandbag. We'd run so slow and walk. I mean, if it resembled a hill, we were walking. And you just keep going. Just keep going, and you don't stop. And you always know that someone in the field out there would give a lot to be where you're at. So don't stop, if that makes sense. So, wherever you're at in a race, like, if you still have the ability to finish, you have to finish, because there's someone behind you that would be like, man, I wish I could be up there and being able to finish this race. So you got to keep going. That would be my advice.
I think it's pretty good advice. I'm gonna have to use that myself in my training. That whole hill thing. I'm gonna start walking everything that looks like a hill.
Yeah, walk the hills. I didn't start running hills till like 2 years ago. So.
Rolling up to some next questions. I kind of wanted to know what your guys' mindset on training and in regards to the future plans. I know there's gonna be a lot of uncertainty as we go forward about what races will or will not happen. And I'm kind of curious what you guys are wanting, or how you guys are approaching that in terms of training and maintaining something if you don't have a specific maybe goal, or you're uncertain if a race is going to happen and stuff like that. Travis,
you want to go, Travis?
Yeah. So I can start with this. And actually, for me, the hardest part about this whole kind of, everybody's quarantined, a lot of races are canceled, is, I'm fortunate to still have a job, but working from home has actually made me unmotivated to run. It's not races being canceled. Like, I'm kind of home all day, and like I'm on my computer, and then I'm just like, I just kind of want to sit on the couch. Where I never realized, me going to work and like coming home and like made me more motivated to get out the door and just kind of have fun and run. Like, I kind of feel like I'm in a funk right now where, I'll be on my computer all day, and then I'm just like, I don't really want to run right now. And, some of that could be I've raced twice in the last 4 weeks. So let's hope that it's maybe just a little bit of like, a little over raced, hopefully maybe it was just a little overtraining and just a little hiccup, and I'll get kind of back to things. But I don't necessarily think, races are just fun. I think I like to go to races I get to see a lot of people. Like, the reason I know most of you guys is because of, going to races and meeting people. And so I think the race environment is kind of just like a party to celebrate your training. But really the most fun part about it is the training, because you get to have so much, some people are like, I hate to train. Like, some people only focus on an event, and I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I mean, if you're going to be in this for the long haul, and I know Gabe can preach to this too, like, if you're going to keep going and you're going to stay in this sport, like, you got to love to do the training, because that's what's the most fun. And then you get to celebrate with all the people when you get to go to an event. But in the short term, I have some little goals that I might try and achieve. I don't really know. Who knows? Maybe one of these weekends I'll see how fast I can run 100. I won't have quite as much vert as you, Gabe, but I might get some city miles.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, maybe. I don't know if I can really entertain 100 city miles, but it's possible. But hopefully everything shapes up. At least halfway through this season. I don't want to put a timeline on this because nobody knows what to expect. But hopefully, come August, we're all up and going again. Because I'd like to have a Hard Rock qualifier again. And if I don't get a Hard Rock race this year, I'm going to lose my qualifiers. So I'm in for Cascade Crest, or I think I'm like 12 on the lottery or 12 on the wait list, which would more than likely probably put me in. So let's just hope, people distance themselves enough to allow us to run the distances we want, I guess.
What about you, Gabe?
Yeah, well, I would just say you just keep training, and I mean, so like I'm signed up. My next official race would be Bob's backyard, Big Timber backyard, which he has actually moved it from the 1st of May to the end of May, and then Mohican, of course. So those are like what I have coming up. And I'm just looking, I mean, in my mind, I say, well, they'll happen and we'll go do them. And so I'm just going to train. And if they end up not, if they don't happen, then I'll just do something to test your fitness. Take your body, train and take your body somewhere it hadn't been before. So when you races come back around, it'll be easy to get back to that point. So whatever your goals are, if you want to run a 5K in under 15 minutes or under 20 minutes, you can go out and do that. If you want to run a marathon under 4 hours, go out and do it. You don't need a race. If you want to run 100 miles under 24 hours, just set you up a course, put you some water bottles out, go after it. So that's kind of my mindset.
Love it.
Gabe, I will say though, I think you probably have a faster 5K than me. It's probably the worst distance ever. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if I do, it's a complete fluke.
Great. Well, we want to thank you guys. I appreciate you guys coming on the show tonight, talk with us about your 100 mile, your ridiculous 100 mile in your backyard, which mind you, when I opened it up on Strava and saw it and I zoomed in, it was like a solid bar. It wasn't like you couldn't see all of it was like a bar. Yeah. And I was like, what is this? Yeah. Then I realized what had happened.
I've always wondered how many loops you have to do before it's just solid. There's no.
Well, do you know how many official laps it was?
I think it was like around 166 or so, because I have a segment. There's a little segment on that loop, and I think I did the segment 166 times.
Oh my gosh!
Get on a town.
Oh, I love it. But
yeah.
So that, and Travis, congrats on your first place win. You guys have any final words you want to say? Nothing?
No, thanks, fellas. I really enjoy the Ridge Runners. Surprisingly, for whatever it's worth, it has motivated me, and so I appreciate it. I draw my motivation from little things, and so like you guys do your Runners of the Year and prediction shows, it gets me all pumped up for stuff. So thanks.
Well, we greatly appreciate that. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Just try.
Oh, go ahead.
Go for it, Travis.
I was gonna say, gratitude as well. Between all you guys. I mean, Gabe, you're one of the first names I heard or saw when I came into the scene, and you've always been. You've only gotten better, and you're kind of a historic figure in the Ohio scene. And then also, I mean, with these little random shows, with you're making. nobody's taking this super serious. Like, I mean, we all take it serious when we're racing, but like this just makes it more fun. Like we all know it's all for fun, and we're all never going to be probably sponsored athletes or anything. We're in our, Gabe and I were in our 30s now. So it's fun to enjoy it. It's fun to have a laugh at it, and it's fun to keep training and knowing some people are paying attention, and it's just all, it's fun.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, no, we appreciate the kind words, guys. Just a reminder that you guys can catch these live on YouTube or take us on the go via Apple Podcasts. If you know anyone that you think would be a great guest of the show, like these two were, let us know in the comments below. Gabe and Travis, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you both again, and we'll hope to get you guys back on in the future after you guys do something else that's just mind-boggling.
Thanks, guys.
Sweet.
Thanks.